In English, we have this expression, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, meaning that while you expect 2 plus 2 plus 2 to always equal 6, sometimes the ingredients or the elements of something work so well together, the end result is even better than you would expect by looking at the individual parts. And I think a great example of this can be found in the second movement of Schubert's second to last piano sonata, where if you look at the ingredients, you look at the elements that make up the piece, the chords, the texture, the melody, each individually, you might not expect much, but when you add them all together, it makes one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written. Now, before we talk about these individual elements, I just want to play a couple seconds for you so you can kind of get in the mood, get in the mindset of how beautiful the sound is, and then we'll dive into those individual parts. All right, we'll listen to more in a second here, but let's start off by talking about these chords. We have 3 sharps. So we're in the key of A major or F sharp minor. Probably pretty obvious from the few seconds you heard, we're totally in F sharp minor. We are not in A major. You have to really just use your ear for that. You can use your eyes and see a bunch of F sharp minor chords, especially the E sharps. Give it away that we're in a minor key. So F sharp minor, really the first measure is just the 1 chord, which is expected. We often start off on 1 chord. Measure 2, one of the most common places to go is a 5 chord. And we go there. 5 chords often resolve to 1 chord. Measure 3, 1 chord. Measure 4, back to a 5 chord. Measure 5 is actually a little weird. We only have an A and a C sharp. And if you heard A and C sharp with no context, you probably should assume an A major chord. If I just play those 2 notes, you should assume. But in this context, with the C sharp 7 chord really wanting to resolve to F sharp minor, I feel like it feels a little minor-ish. It almost sounds sad. But I'm not playing the F sharp. Schubert left it out, so it is an element, a degree of vagueness, but it's probably just a 1 chord. The next measure is just a 5 chord with this minor 9 thrown on top. You can't call it a fully diminished 7th chord because the C sharp's down below. And then it goes to 3 chords in a row, 1 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord. So I'm probably going to call this video something like Schubert will make you cry in just 3 chords. But really this first line, if you already are crying with how beautiful it is, it's just 2 chords, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5. So not only is it just 2 chords, but it's basically the 2 simplest chords. 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5 is about the easiest progression you can do in classical music. So the chords so far have been very tame. Now the next line starts out just as simple, 1 5, 1 5. And here we get our first different chord, a 4 chord. Now, it normally wouldn't be that special to hear a 4 chord, but considering how slow this piece is, how long we've been waiting for something other than 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, it's really special when you hear this. I mean, if you want to, you could even say the 4 chords over 1 in the bass, so it's not even like a true 4 chord, but it is a 4 chord, it's a B minor chord. Back to 1, back to 5, back to 1, back to 5, back to 1. So the chords here are so simple. If I just said, I'm going to write a piece for you, and my chord progression goes 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 1 5, 4, 1 5, 1 5, 1, you wouldn't expect much. That chord progression is super simple. So let's move on to the next element. Maybe you're like, hey, the texture. Maybe the texture is really creative. So no, The left-hand accompaniment pattern is nothing to be impressed by. Once again, I know in the piece it is perfect. I'm saying this piece is amazing. But if I just said, once again, I want to write a piece and my left-hand pattern goes, you wouldn't expect much if you knew that I was going to stick with that texture for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a half lines of that left-hand texture at a very slow tempo. So it's got to be the melody, right? The melody must be the most beautiful melody ever. Well, while the melody is kind of a step up in complexity from the chords and the accompaniment pattern, which are two of the most simple things possible, and then now, the melody is pretty, and like I said, it is a little more sophisticated than both the chords and the harmony were, but still it's not this melody that immediately strikes you as like, oh, it's so crazy the way it pulls off that leap there. There's that interval you don't expect to be possible. So what does this mean? How can these three things, none of which individually stand out above the maybe average piece, how can they combine to make one of the most beloved slow movements ever written? They are perfect for each other, and they all perfectly fit the mood of the piece. It's not just random chords, it's this sadness, and the sadness is not overcomplicated yet. There's not just all this, distractions of these amazing chords. It just makes you sit and soak in this sadness. Have you ever thought about why this piece is so sad? When you hear this, it's almost solitude feeling. You're just soaking in the sadness, and the accompaniment pattern is doing much the same thing. If we had some really active arpeggio thing, you wouldn't be necessarily sitting here pondering the deep implications of this melody. And about that melody, there's kind of two things here I want to point out. First of all, it's very station by station. We're kind of hanging out A to G sharp. You kind of boil that down. We went A, G sharp, and then A, G sharp. So this basically is just A, G sharp, which by the way fits really well with the bass. The same thing sort of happens here. It's not a melody that's really distracting us by going. But Schubert does throw in the wrinkles with the rhythm, which really helps. To not just to be, if he didn't have those little rhythmic wrinkles and measures like 3, I think this would be actually possibly boring, if I can say those words. If it was just. See what I mean? There's not enough there. Part of the backdrop of this simplicity really makes those little rhythmic, those dotted figures shine. Now, if you're already familiar with this piece, you might know what's about to happen next, but check this out. This is one of those moves to major where you can just tell it's still sad. We're trying so hard to make it happy, but you just know it's not going to stay happy. But I want to point out here the chords and the texture really don't change. We go to A major, but we have a 1 chord, a 5 chord, a 1 chord, back to a 5 chord. So we're doing the same trick, 1 5 1 5. Now it's clever because we're in a major key now, but he gets away with the exact same melody. So instead of now it's a major. Now, before we talk about this next section, I just want to mention the historical context around this piece. I didn't want to lead with this because I don't necessarily want to taint your ears before you hear it. I like people kind of hearing it a little and experiencing it first. But this is written in the final year before Schubert dies. Maybe he's aware of some sickness. He's aware of something going on in his life where he is degrading because he's not going to live for much longer. In fact, it wasn't even published until after he passed away. These last 3 sonatas, some of the greatest pieces ever written, were not even published until after his death. Some people go so far to say in this piece, you can really hear him coming to terms with the end of his life. You could tell he didn't have much life left on this earth, and you can just hear him working through this deep sadness. Now, it obviously can be dangerous sometimes to draw too concrete of conclusions like, yes, Schubert wrote this piece for sure, thinking about his own impending death. He knew he was getting sick. It's dangerous to make those assumptions unless a composer specifically says that is what they were doing. But at the same time, I get why people would say that about this piece. It certainly sounds like someone struggling with immense, deep sadness. Okay, now back to the piece. One really fun game I like to play in my own head, and I really encourage all of you guys to do when you're playing a piece, learning it, when you're listening or analyzing a piece, ask yourself, if you were the composer, what would you do next? What would be your next step? Let's imagine you had written this opening melody, then you did the little trick in major, then you went back to the opening melody, you kept it really simple, you basically just used 3 chords and you pulled that off and it was gorgeous. What would you do now? By asking yourself that question, sometimes it really leads you to realize how brilliant these composers are. Like maybe you wrote this beginning, but then you're like, okay, it's been a little slow. The melody's been really slow. The accompaniment, you know what? I think we need to add some left-hand activity now and do the melody again. And you get loud and explode the sound. And you're like, well, that makes a lot of sense because we really been holding back for a long time now. So ask yourself that question. Maybe that's what I would do. I'd repeat the melody if I got to this point and did everything Schubert did. And I would add some more stuff. I would add some more chords. Do it again, but make the chords more creative second time around. That'd be another great way to kind of vary this experience. But what does Schubert do? Check this out. Isn't that incredible? The effect a simple octave has on you. As an audience member, a listener, you're really expecting something more to happen. We really finished the whole first section. Now we can kind of roll into something new. And we'll get there. The middle section goes crazy at some point. But he simply adds an octave, which just sounds even more desperate and even more sad. And it's not even that difficult. Once again, that element, now we have 4 different elements we talked about. How to flesh out a melody, how to do more with the melody, add an octave, and that's it. Now, I know you channel regulars are expecting me now to talk about the middle section, how it builds and builds and gets all crazy and then goes back to this first melody. But I'm going to leave that for you guys to discover on your own. Your homework is to go listen to someone play this piece. I personally recommend that Brenda recording. I think it's awesome, but go listen to some Schubert. It's great. And also while you're at it, go practice piano. See you guys.